There's a sword above my head. There's a monster in my bed now for the longest time. And I've been waiting in my room. I've been whistling a tune now that I can't describe, and I don't know why. So if you really wanna know, I don't think I'm gonna go and venture out, 'cause they keep on running through my head, words I cannot find and no I can't deny, but I'm still far from the edge. There's a part of me out there with you far from my mind. The histories we never said, I've raised out of sight, as though every part of me wants to stay with you. I don't really know what I'm supposed to do, because you're not gonna go my way. And I don't wanna take my hand, and then I'll turn to stone. And I should've known that you're better off alone. And now I'm turned to stone, to stone, to stone, turned to stone, to stone. Gotta find a way back in from the mess I made. I'm drowning in a paper bag of my own mistakes. words I've turned into stone. And if you don't really understand, guess it's fine, it's fine, it's fine. It's fine, it's fine, it's fine. It's fine, it's fine, it's fine. I began to fade away. It's colder close to dawn. I'm looking out into the grey, and I just don't know why I call. 'Cause I know I shouldn't feel like this forever, but I ain't got a better plan. I liked it when you called my name. I wish that you would feel the same. 'Cause I won't need anyone. I won't need anyone at all. After the fall, I guess we'll never know for sure. It's hard to pin you down. My stomach twists, unsteady gait. And who's to say how far we'll fall? And I know I shouldn't live like this forever, but I ain't got a better plan. I liked it when you called my name. I wish that you would feel the same. both know. So what is it when we both know? What do we become? Oh, I keep forgetting. Oh, I'm waiting for nothing. I can trace my outline on the city down below. Part of you is leaving, and we both know, we both know. I figured it would change, forget our golden age. Oh, it never was. Now you're a foreign land, I don't understand. Oh, what do we become? Oh, I keep forgetting. Oh, I'm waiting for nothing. I can trace my outline on the city down below. Part of you is leaving, and we both know, we both know.
Do you know we are the young ghosts?
All right. Hmm.
Doesn't seem to be anybody else who agrees with me. Do you believe what you see? Motionless sweet, nothing is real. Wasting my time in the waiting line. Do you believe in what you see? Living life. you see? And I'll shout, I'll scream, but I'd rather not be seen.
Hey everybody, and welcome to our first session of Santa Fe Psych Live or Psychology Updates Live or something like that. I haven't really decided on my cool branding production name yet, but all I know is I'm really excited to be talking to you guys for real. I am really excited to see everybody in here, jumping in the chat. Feel free to hit each other up, share some tips and tricks as we go along here. Our goal today is to just have a real chill time. I am really excited to share some of my favorite music with you guys. It looks like those tunes are still pumping. Why don't you guys let me know if you can hear the mic okay, if our audio sounds all right. I want to make sure that you guys can hear me, but also hear the tunes without it being too difficult. If you didn't see from the waiting room, I am really glad. By the way, it looks like a number of you guys are down with 07. I'm glad you like them. They are one of my favorite bands ever. This track, I think, is off of their album Simple Things. Both Simple Things and the aptly titled Warm Sound is just a couple of my favorite albums. I listened to them all the way through college, and then I listened to him in grad school too, and this super chill, warm vibe is what got me through those horrible, intense study sessions, because it helps keep us nice, level, grounded, but also be able to focus. All right, good. I'm glad it sounds like the audio is working out okay. It's always a kind of like throwing a dart at a dartboard trying to get this right. So today I've got a number of things that I want us to be able to do. I got my other screen up here to be able to take a look at what it is we're doing here. We're going to have about an hour today. I'm aiming for us to finish up before 2, let everybody finish up. Yeah, Kathy makes a point. A lot of people got connected with 07 over through the Garden State soundtrack, but it's, again, where I know a lot of people got it. So if you haven't heard them before, I hope you really like them because they're one of my favorites. I got to thank everybody who asked questions for our review chill hang sesh today. I'm not going to hit every single one of them, but I was able to distill them down to the highlights. So I've broken up our questions into a number of different categories. We're going to start by talking about the test format. We'll talk about the material that's on the test, the upcoming research and analyze assignment that's also due on Friday. Then we'll talk about some test prep tips, give you my psychologist hot take on how to get ready for a test really effectively, so that you not only do well at it, but you spend as little time as possible on it and as little stress as possible. I'm glad you guys like my setup. I am semi-obsessive about my audio video whole deal. It's part of how I make use of my non-productive, work-based procrastination, where I'm not doing what I should do, which is grading and announcements and stuff, but it feels like work because I'm working on my recording setup. So if it sounds good, that's because I've been wasting or investing my time to have it that way. So yeah, I'm glad to have you guys here. I'm going to jump in. Oh, in addition to the work stuff we're doing today, I'm also excited to share with you guys a couple of things. First of all, Grady's hot take about the coolest stuff going on right now, as well as one of my favorite things in all of psychology. So we're going to move kind of fast through some of this stuff so we have a chance to get to all of it. Let's go ahead and we'll start out talking about the test format. What is this thing that's coming up on Friday? Let me be straight with you guys. What we have on Friday, the two different parts, the research and analyze assignment and the test. If you're somebody who took one of my classes before, this might seem familiar to you because these two things together used to be the test. It used to be a number of multiple choice questions as well as an essay all in one piece. Now, as you can expect, I got a couple of things out of that. The first thing I got out of it was a bunch of panic attacks from students, because asking you guys to do a multiple choice test as well as write an essay under a time condition was a recipe for horrible, horrible levels of stress. I wouldn't be able to do it, and I don't know why I was asking other people to do it too. The other thing I got was a lot of crummy essays, because something that we know now, because of psychology, that we're going to talk about later this semester, is that there is a relationship between stress and performance, and a little bit of stress tends to produce good performance. Well, there's an argument that you don't really need grades to do well in school, but if we didn't have grades, you might not work as hard. But once those grades are really high pressure and you're under all this time pressure, you're going to crumble and you're going to have a hard time doing as well as you want to, right? So, this is part of again, my whole deal. I want to keep things chill. I want to keep things positive. I want you to be excited to get in these tests and show me what you know. I don't want you to be terrified of them. So one of the things that I've done here is I have broken out the essay from the test itself. So this is an essay that used to be attached to the first test, and now it's like its own thing. The other thing I've done is, since I'm asking you guys to write 7 essays anyway, one connected with each of the tests, I'm not asking you to do additional research and analyze papers like I used to. So some students have asked questions about whether we're gonna have semester-long papers to work on. Nah, this stuff is it. So I'll talk a little bit about the research and analyze assignment coming up on Friday, because it used to be part of the test anyway, and I got some good questions about it. We'll hit that, but you can think of it as kind of like covering some of that same material. The test itself, I stay away from that term exam because, among other things, the term exam gives me heart palpitations, and if it does that for me, I can guess it probably does it for you guys too. If I ask you guys, who here on a scale of 1 to 10, where 1 is the chillest you've ever been and 10 is currently having a panic attack, the word exam, how much stress does that cause for you? My experience in education and college, exam, just the word, puts me at about a 6. And this is where I need to remember there's a delay with the chat, right? So you guys aren't going to be jumping in right away. But just give me an idea. Scale 1 to 10. How much stress does that word exam give you, right? I'm going to guess that a lot of folks are going to be jumping in here with pretty high level numbers, because it's the sort of stuff that's designed to make us stressed out. This semester we'll talk about why teachers do a bunch of stuff that's maybe not great for their students, but we kind of don't know how to do it otherwise. Yeah, so I see so you're jumping in right away with an 8, right? So that's an example. We got a 7. We're gonna get some big numbers here. I'd love to get those down to a 3 or 4. It's a little bit of stress, but enough to motivate you to do well without causing crippling anxiety. So among other things, Samuel, that's where we want to be, a 3 or 4, right? So don't think of these exams, right? An exam is something you do once, twice, maybe 3 times over the course of a semester. These are tests. You got 7 of them, 8 of them, right? Not that big of a deal. Super low pressure, super chill, right? You're gonna jump in, cover a little bit of information. Yeah, Ashley brings up the point about midterm or final, tons of stress. And that's the kind of stress that tends to crush you. So instead, we've got a bunch of these bad boys over the course of the semester. I drop your 2 lowest ones anyway. So there's absolutely no reason to stress. You're gonna get in this test, show me what you know, and then you're gonna be fine, right? In terms of the format itself, you'll be able to see, I think you have 50 minutes for this test, and there are 30 multiple choice questions on it. That may feel like an obscene amount of time to answer those questions, but that's the whole idea. I want there to be enough time pressure that you'll sit down and do it all in one sitting, but I don't want it to be enough time pressure that that's even weighing on your mind at all, because there's a distraction conflict theory of motivation and social psychology that tells us that stress, like time pressure, that kind of stress is distracting and keeps you from thinking about the things you should be thinking about, like all the great psychology stuff you know. So 30 multiple choice questions in the space of 50 minutes, plenty of time. Now, you're going to notice that that's not plenty of time if you don't know your information. Because one person asked you the question, are we using HonorLock for our tests? I'm not using HonorLock or uProctor or any of that, because again, if a timed exam ratchets up your stress level to a 9 or 10, you know that using something like HonorLock or uProctor, ProctorU, or whatever it is going to ratchet that stress level up there. If, for example, you wanted to share a problem that you had with one of these pieces of software, how it impacted you, I know everybody else here would like to hear that. So you jump in and share a sentence or two if you ran into some issues with that stuff. But I know I used it for like one nightmare semester and decided no, we end up stressing everybody else out. So in terms of format, I got a ton of questions about what is this format? The test, multiple choice, 30 questions. And my goal is for every test to be the same in terms of format. Changes in what kind of questions or the kind of material we cover, but you know what you're getting into when you sit down and take one of these tests. One difference, this first test, I wanted to wait until the live stream was over, so you'll have Thursday and Friday of this week to take that test. I'm sorry it's so tight, but it's just the beginning of the semester, the way it works. You'll have Thursday and Friday this time, but in the future, you will have the entire week to take the test. So the week opens up on Monday, it closes on Friday. You'll have that whole week to do it. Oh, there's also a nasty little secret here. I publish the homepage for the class on Mondays to get you started in that work week, help build in a little bit of that free time on Saturdays and Sundays. When a week closes on Friday, that following Saturday, like the very next minute Saturday morning, you can get in on that next week and start working ahead. So if you have free weekends, but you're like Mondays and Tuesdays of lockdown, go ahead and start working early. There's no reason you can't. So students asking, like, on the test, will there be matching questions? Will there be true-false questions? Will there be fill-in-the-blank questions? There will not be. I noticed Felipe just asked a question saying you can't ask questions in the Canvas thread. That locked down before the stream started, so I have time to compile everyone's questions. But you can jump in, ask questions here. I'm happy to answer them. So let me go ahead. Oh yeah, so absolutely. So I see a couple of stories coming in here about the honor lock and ProctorU stuff, and it's distracting and stressful, and I hate it. It's one of these examples of we're worried about something that doesn't really seem to be a problem, or at least not a problem we can fix this way, and we end up punishing everybody for it. In my experience, a better way to fight cheating than to punish people who are cheating is to try to catch students before that's even something that would occur to them, and give them other options, like really great supports. We'll talk about that in just a little bit. Cool. So we'll talk a little bit about the essay here and what that kind of format is like. But in general, you guys should have seen it. I think it's a 300-word limit on the essay, which is really what I'm looking for. And this is a pared down version of a bigger paper combined with an essay prompt from a previous test. And part of it is I want to know what you guys are interested in. But much like the test questions, when students ask about the essay, one of the biggest things that we need to come down to is realizing that the essay, as much as I want to know about your love of Avengers or Harry Potter or Friends or The Bachelor, that's not really what the essay is about. The essay is about you demonstrating your knowledge of social psychology as well as your ability to conduct critical research, right? To go out and conduct research and figure out what a good source is and tell me that you know why it's a good source. And this is really an excellent thing to demonstrate your ability to do, to change your perspective based on the research you conduct. In the US in particular, we really value sticking to our guns, but more than anything this semester, we'll examine how that's maybe not a great thing to do all the time. So from here, I want to go ahead and pivot to making a couple of recommendations for you guys. Grady, as you know, like we know youth culture is really big, and since I am an ancient old man, I am no longer tapped into like the stuff that is cool, that's hip, that's fly, that's fire, right? I just don't know any of that. So I use, my connections with youthful people, like all you beautiful folks, but the youngest person I know is my son Grady. So when I want to know what's really cool, I get into what he is into. I got to make a couple of recommendations, both of which are on Netflix. Right now, Grady is super into two things. The documentary Our Planet. We were looking for some cool stuff about orcas and ended up watching a documentary that involved like leopards and goats and stuff. That documentary Our Planet is great. It's narrated by Sir David Attenborough, who is a super cool dude, and it's a really like enjoyable watch and documentary, and they don't shy away from talking about the ways in which humans are impacting our environment. So that's cool to know about too. The other big recommendation that I have for you guys is it's a kids show, I guess we call it a cartoon, but I'll call it an animation called Hilda. Hilda is like a really fantastic, faithful adaptation of a graphic novel of a comic book. And Grady got into it when he was sick earlier in the spring. And it's got some wild, semi-bizarre sort of stuff going on in it, but it's really about the difficulty of growing up. It's about nature and artifice and our relationship with the world around us and mystery. And it's really fun and interesting and cool. And I just absolutely love the vibe of the whole show. If you like interesting, cool stuff, you will love the show Hilda. I really like to watch it with Grady. So I'm going to jump in and look at a couple of these questions here before we get back to questions about the test, class, and essays. I see Sam asking a question. Do I have trick questions on the exam? I don't, but we want to think about the way test questions might work. My goal is to have very few questions that just ask you definitions, because that doesn't really give you an opportunity to demonstrate learning. What I really like to do is have questions that ask that you really understand and think about these concepts. So sometimes, for example, students will feel like a question has more than one possible correct answer. This is something that happens a lot of times when we don't know the material as well as we could, but also when we feel really stressed out. We can often fall prey to confirmation bias, which is when we hold an idea in our head and then end up seeking out evidence that confirms it. So I can see, for example, that one test answer might be correct and see the other one might be correct. And the more I think about it, the more I think about evidence that both of them are correct. If you can turn that on its head and instead try to figure out which one of those test answers is incorrect, you'll find relatively quickly that you can find lots of evidence that one of them is incorrect, but that the other one you're just really struggling to find reasons why, and that's probably the wrong one. When I say that I want you to be able to think about this, it really is like a measure of understanding the concepts as deeply as possible. So like with the social self, for example, I might not have a question that just asks you what self-esteem is, or even just a question about like what boosts self-esteem. Instead, I might ask you about people's self-presentation and how much we self-monitor, and how that is connected to our level of self-esteem. So you might realize, like, for example, there's a connection between self-presentation and self-monitoring. The more we self-monitor, the more likely we are to adapt to our situations and change our self-presentation. Unless, of course, you're somebody who doesn't self-monitor a lot. And the kind of people who don't self-monitor a lot are the kind of people who have pretty high self-esteem. You tend to feel pretty confident in yourself. It's like, I am who I am, and I don't need to apologize to anybody. I just feel good about who I am. This is somebody like my dad. My dad, before he passed away, somebody who loved wearing camo, never hunted a day in his life. He was a musician, a pacifist, and he wore camo because he thought it was pretty. And something I needed to make peace with was whether we were going to Golden Corral or PF Chang's or Dragonfly. It did not matter. My father was going to wear a camo t-shirt, that or the neon yellow shirt he wore when he rode his motorcycle. So it was like on me to pick a place where camo was going to be okay, because he was going to wear it. And, you know, not being a high self-monitor, not being being flexible in his self-presentation, my father was somebody who had really high self-esteem. So finding that kind of connection between terms, having that level of understanding, I'm not gonna have trick questions, but, you know, those kinds of questions are really what I'm aiming for. I see Ashley's got another question about, can I go over the 300-word essay? And is it all right to have 2 sources for the topic I've chosen, right? It's absolutely, like there is flexibility here. You want to think about the length guidelines on our essays as really just as guidelines for how much information I am looking for, like what kind of information I want to see. If you're really struggling to hit that 300-word limit, it's a sign that we probably need to revisit either the structure of your essay or what kind of information is in there, because chances are we're missing some pretty critical stuff. A lot of times I find that students struggle to reach that word limit when they haven't had the opportunity to review the assignment in full as deeply as possible, and that starting writing that assignment way earlier, like a full week ahead of time, gives you an opportunity to really think about it, rewrite it, draft it, revise it, and do really well. So let me jump into a couple of quick questions about just class stuff in general. I'll be keeping an eye on the chat, so jump in there, ask other questions, share with each other, and I'll address anything that comes through there. One student said, you know, all of these posts can be a little overwhelming. Is there a calendar posted or available that outlines the dates that items are due with those due dates? Yeah and nah. There is kind of a bare bones calendar on the syllabus right now. As we go through these first couple of modules, though, you'll see that I'm building out the future modules, updating due dates, and setting things up. In general, you can plan for every 2 weeks to have a test, a research and analyze assignment, and then in your off weeks, you'll usually have a participation assignment, and sometimes these things will build up. But remember that the tests and research and analyze assignments are based on 2 to 3 weeks of work anyway. And so it's really important that even though you've got the time that you decide how to spend, it's really important that you budget that time, that you're working every single day, that you're staying on top of your stuff, and you're working all week long so you can really get that material under your belt. Because scrambling to get that stuff done before the test, as we'll talk about when we get to the test prep section, you're not really preparing for the test at all. We're just trying to mitigate the anxiety about preparing for that. I've got a couple of great hints if you find yourself getting stressed out about like all the posts and reminders and updates and things. First one, just like get it on your calendar to check in with Canvas every single day. Get in, look for updates, look for discussions, look for things to change. And even if they haven't, if that's just part of your like 10-minute morning routine, you can rest easy the rest of the day knowing that you checked in. Second thing, if you haven't already, sync the Canvas calendar with your phone and turn on those notifications. That way you know that no matter what changes, stuff is going to be in your calendar. Hopefully, for example, you saw like this live stream was in your calendar so that you wouldn't miss it. Also, if you have recommendations from other classes that you've taken, things that your professor did that you really loved, hit me up with those recommendations. We tend to work in isolation for the most part, especially during COVID. We have not gotten a great opportunity to collaborate with each other and share about the things that worked. You'll have a feedback opportunity about halfway through the class to tell me some other things, but you don't have to wait for that feedback opportunity to let me know what you'd like to see more, less of, things like that. Just let me know. There was another question, and I don't know if the person asking it is here today, about whether there's a way to separate posts with due dates from those with information. I'm not 100% sure what that question means, but if our question asker is here today, go ahead, break that out. Let me know what it is you are wondering about, and I'll dip back in. Until then, though, I'm going to move on to talking about what kind of material is on the test. I got a lot of questions that pretty much boil down to like, where should I focus when it comes to studying? What material is going to be on the test? This first test is a little bit weird. I see Kathy saying that the link to sync the calendar didn't work. It might work now, but if you're still not able to get the calendar to sync, let me know. So I got a lot of questions about that. This first test is a little weird since the first week of the semester included introductions and stuff, but especially that first chapter, podcast, things like that, that information is absolutely fair game for the test. When it comes down to what's going to be on the test, here's a great way to think about it. If this were a face-to-face class, we would meet with each other for 3 hours a week, and then you'd do about 9 hours a week of studying outside of class. I might assign some additional reading or podcasts or stuff like that anyway, but we'd see each other to have discussions about stuff. Well, since we're not going to have that face-to-face time this semester, the things that I ask you to watch, the things I ask you to listen to, the things I ask you to read and do, that's the replacement for class time. So like Felipe is asking about, are these things just to help you understand material, or are they going to be tested on them? Absolutely going to be tested on the stuff. That is the replacement for our face-to-face class time. In fact, if you were sitting in my class, you'd probably notice really deep similarities, and that's because it happens so often. Tim Harford's podcast, Cautionary Tales, is an example that like I listen to that podcast religiously, and I'm regularly like, oh man, this is fantastic. This is something I am going to talk about in class, and I build a whole lesson around it. I was listening today, for example, to an episode about the Charge of the Light Brigade and about how it was a result of power distance and culture, as well as a thing called the curse of knowledge. And I'm like, I talk about both those in social psychology. I'm going to use that in social psych, or I'm going to assign it. And so what I've really done is, rather than recording videos of me paraphrasing these things, I've just gone ahead and assigned like the cool, sexy people talking about this stuff in interesting ways to you guys. So you absolutely 100% want to treat the videos, podcasts, other stuff as seriously as you would class time. This means a couple of things, right? That you don't want to do it at the same time that you're doing other stuff. It can be really tempting to be like, I got to get this podcast over with, so I'm going to listen to it while I'm watching TV or doing homework or something else. But you know as well as I do that that's not really studying and learning it. You're like cutting the grass at the same time, but you're not really studying and learning. So we want to treat this as much as possible the same way you would class time. Set yourself up in a situation where you'll be able to focus, where you won't be distracted, where you can really learn from the material, and then do things like take notes that help you focus and learn about it. I see a question in the chat about whether the stream will be available later. Absolutely. But we want to remember the principle. If not now, when? It happens a lot of times that we don't do things now because we don't feel like it. I know I do that, and then it never gets done. So if you have the opportunity to do something and you can do it then, and it's really important to get done to you, then you absolutely want to do it as soon as possible. So you definitely want to focus on the textbook, but the same way that we would think about this in my class, you want to think about the textbook as like the foundation for your knowledge. And then the videos, the podcasts, the articles, the activities, these are things that I thought were interesting and that I'd like you to know more about, or they were things that I thought were difficult and I wanted to help you understand better, or they were things that I thought were really important that the textbook didn't cover, so I assigned them. So like the material this week on mindset, absolutely critical. The textbook doesn't go into it, but it's really critical to our understanding of social psychology today, of understanding education today, and it's a big part of like you becoming a really fantastic student. It turns out that a lot of the ways that we were taught to think about thinking, to think about learning, it's really bad for us. If you were somebody who was taught, for example, that you were a gifted student, you are more likely to give up quickly, you are more likely to become frustrated quickly, you're more likely to struggle in college than somebody who was just taught that they were an average student. So absolutely, like really, learning to think about yourself differently is something that can be really, really important to learn here. So let me go ahead and look through really quickly. Is there a strong focus on definitions or names and dates? We want to think about names, dates, definitions as that foundational level of learning. We'll talk about test prep here in a little bit, but one of the things that can be really important in terms of studying for tests effectively is to divorce ourselves from the notion that the day-to-day work we do in our classes and the studying we do for our tests are separate things. Ideally, if you learn your information effectively, you don't need to study for a test because you already know that information. So if we can approach that information with the goal in mind of studying for the test from the jump, we're gonna be in way better shape. So like definitions, again, for example, that's that foundation, that's just learning the concept and then being able to understand it, apply it to the world around us, connect it to new concepts, connect it to ourselves and understand how the world works better. That's how you're really gonna do well on the test. If you're studying education or you encountered this in your own education, you might have heard about Bloom's taxonomy. Benjamin Bloom, Daniel Bloom, I'm blanking on the guy's name, but it's a framework that's helpful for understanding how cognition and education work well. But Bloom's taxonomy basically is this model for learning that states that lower levels of learning, namely rote memorization, are not very good for retaining information well or being able to apply it effectively later. It's like I could memorize concepts out of a German dictionary while knowing no German at all. But being able to apply those concepts to myself, learning the difference between German and English or root words that connect them together or new cultural concepts that these terms connect with and interesting German idioms and what those common phrases mean, like these are all the things that make it entertaining and interesting and applicable, and they're the things that I'll remember later. There's a really great TED Talk by a journalist and memory champion, Joshua 4, and his motto, which I really love, is that if we want to remember something, we need to make it memorable. And if we enter our learning with these podcasts, with textbook chapters, with videos, the goal of making it memorable, we're going to do way better remembering it for the test. In terms of like exactly what concepts and terms to focus on, we're going to talk about this in just a little bit, but if you're not making use already of study techniques like the PQ3R technique, which I'll share with you guys in just a second, or the study cycle, or the Cornell note-taking method, I really strongly recommend it. If you have a chance right now, like anybody who has a technique that works really well for them, go ahead and drop it in the chat right now. Give me your best like studying or note-taking or conceptualizing tip that you got, and we'll go ahead and share just a little bit while we're all in here together. I was bringing up a thing I want to show you guys, so we'll get that up here. So let's go ahead and shift just a little bit from talking about the material that's on the test to talking about the research and analyze assignment. These assignments are meant to measure a few things. They're meant to evaluate your knowledge of social psychology, your ability to conduct research, your ability to think critically about those sources, to use information from the class and the sources effectively to accomplish a goal, and your ability to use the writing process to craft a good essay. If it sounds like I just summarized the rubric, it's because that's exactly what I did. If you have not looked at the rubric for the essay, you gotta jump in there and check that bad boy out, because that is the thing I use to grade. That's the thing that tells you what is important about these essays, right? So get in there and take a look at that rubric, and remember that these essays you're not going to write a perfect one the first time out the gate, and that is fine because writing is a process. But we want to think about it as a process. Oftentimes we try to imagine and then fall prey to the planning fallacy. We try to imagine what it'll take to write a good essay. But if you're somebody who engages in a creative pursuit, whether it's writing or public speaking or playing music, right? It's so easy to like sit down and get overwhelmed. I've been playing at the guitar for a long time now, and I recently got into playing Rocksmith on the computer, which lets you like play Guitar Hero but using your guitar along with music you like. And it's easy to get overwhelmed, like how the hell did Joe Satriani write this piece of music like this? And then you realize that he didn't just like sit down in one session in the space of 20 minutes and write it. It's something that took a long time of writing and revising and writing and revising and writing and revising. And if you're going to write a good essay, that's what it takes. So starting this, way ahead of time, a week before it's due, is a great way to get on top of it. If you haven't started writing your research and analyze essay for this week already, you're going to be fine. It's a fantastic learning opportunity, but get started on it today. Right? And by getting started, I don't mean like sit down and put pen to paper. I mean, review the instructions, start conceptualizing it, start planning it out. I see a few people in here giving some of their study tips. We're going to come back to these. One of the reasons I'm asking you guys to share this up is that we're going to talk about study tips in just a second here, right? But in terms of the research and analyze essay, remember I drop your lowest one, so don't panic about having a hard time on it. There are, again, just remember, going to be a ton of these bad boys, so there's lots of opportunity to learn to do well and stuff. But it's all like the number one thing that is going to make you do well. It is all about starting early, working ahead, and planning ahead. Okay, so I am going to transition here in just a second to talking about some test preparation techniques. We're going to spend a lot of really good time. But before we do that, I want to share with you guys one of my favorite things in all of psychology. This is something that is not technically social psychology, it's cognitive psychology, but it's an example of a way in which psychologists have helped us become better people. And I figured what better thing to talk about in our pre-test live stream than a memory enhancing technique. You might be familiar with this already, but it's one of my favorite memory enhancing techniques. It's something called the PEG list method or the PEG word method. In short, you can think of it as how to never use a shopping list again. Let me go ahead and see if I can get this showing up here really quickly. You'll notice I kind of cut my head off, so I'll try to like sit back here where I can talk to you guys a little bit. We'll talk about the PEG list method a little bit. I'm going to ask you guys to help me out with it, and then I'll jump back into your test prep stuff moving forward. So if you are like me, you are somebody who needs a ton of help remembering even the simplest things. It turns out when we look at the way that our memory breaks down, a lot of us, especially those of us who are maybe a little more than a little bit distractible, we have a hard time remembering to do things, remembering to get things, remembering things for the future that we will need in the future. In fact, I had a couple of disastrous times back when my wife and I were first dating, trying to go to the grocery store and buy what it is we needed to buy. We would talk about what we needed to buy, and then I would get there, and the Venn diagram of like what we were supposed to get and what I got didn't overlap at all. We'd come down with a list of like essential things, and I'd get there and be like, well, what do we need? I don't know. We need stuff we need, and that's probably like what? Steak and beer. And so that's what I'd come home with. Totally the wrong stuff. Among other things, I learned that Parmesan cheese doesn't just come like in a plastic can. You can also like get it as a block, which is a wild thing to learn. Had no idea until we started dating. But the PEG list method is a method that means you never need to use a shopping list again. Because I can ask you now, right? Like if you don't use a shopping list, what is the likelihood you're going to remember everything you need? Especially if you're not just shopping for yourself, but you're shopping for a family. What is the likelihood that you could remember everything in order? The PEG list method is a fantastic example of how we can use a trick, use something that works really well for our brains to remember stuff in general, to remember something that is really hard to remember, to make something meaningful and remember it well. And if you use the PEG list method, it means you'll never use a list again because you remember a list. We'll use here an example of 10 things in order, but you could use it all the way up to 100 things, 1,000 things. These are the sorts of tricks the memory champs use. So the idea is that we often struggle on a list of things like a shopping list because it's a bunch of unrelated stuff that doesn't mean a whole lot. So what the PEG list method asks us to do is to make a list of meaningful things. And you know what? I'll have to see if I can fix this. But to make a list of meaningful things and then use that list excuse me, to remember stuff that can be difficult to remember. Excuse me. So using our peg list, we will use one of the most basic things to come up with a memorable list, and that is to make something memorable by the nature of its sound. To make something sing-songy, rhyming is one of the simplest ways that we remember stuff, even as kids in grade school. So we might start with words that rhyme with numbers, right? So make a peg list of words that rhyme with the numbers that they're connected to. Like 1 is fun. Super cool. We're actually going to do it now. Let me go ahead and get some recommendations here of words that rhyme with the numbers 2 through 10. Like if 1 is fun, then 2 is... I'll go ahead and wait a second since I know there's a delay on the stream. So we'd say 2 is something. 3 is, what's a word that rhymes with 3? What's a word that rhymes with 4 or with 5? We've been doing the toothbrushing song, my son and I have, as we brush our teeth. So like, I wake up in the morning, it's 2:45. I can't stop singing Tweedledee. That's sort of rhyming right there. So I'm going to wait just a second. And in fact, I'm going to see if I can decrease the latency on the stream. I bet trying to decrease latency midstream is going to like break everything, but we're going to try really quick and see. And while we wait, I mean, the upside is if I were streaming a game here, you guys would probably be hard pressed to stream snipe me. Okay, so 1 is fun. I got some recommendations coming in. Kathy says 2 is you. 3 is free from Chelsea. Let's go ahead and get 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. We're going to try to get it in here. And I don't think I can fix the latency here, but that is okay. Let's go ahead and get some more. Okay, 4 is more. 5 is... Okay, 5 is thrive. Let's get some other recommendations in here for numbers. And you know what I might actually start doing here? I'm going to go ahead and fill out the list with my own words that rhyme. And instead, what I need everybody watching the chat to do right now is put something in for a shopping list item. And none of that like fakey fake basic shit like milk and cheese. Give me something specific, something that would be hard to remember. So get in there and tell me something to put on the shopping list. Specific, maybe tough to remember. Okay, 6 is mix, 7 is heaven, 8 is a date, 9 is fine, and 10 is hen. All right, so while I'm waiting for your shopping list to go ahead and populate here in the chat, we're just going to run through our peg list. 1 is fun, 2 is you, 3 is free, 4 is more, 5 is thrive, 6 is mix, 7 is heaven, 8 is date, 9 is fine, and 10 is hen. Okay. The idea here is to have a list that we could practice just a couple of times and have something that is really easy to remember, right? 1 is fun, 2 is you, 3 is free, 4 is more, 5 is thrive, 6 is mix, 7 is heaven, 8 is date, fine is 9, 10 is hen. All right, I got some stuff coming in on the shopping list, but I'm going to try again to just memorize this list really quickly. 1 is fun, 2 is you, 3 is free, 4 is more, 5 is thrive, 6 is mix, 7 is heaven, 8 is date, 9 is fine, 10 is hen. We can practice like just a little bit more here, but you can tell like this is not going to be tough to memorize, though I get mixed up a little bit because I got my own peg list going on. And let's go ahead and make up a shopping list here. I'm just going to run down the chat and say number 1 is Tabasco sauce. We got Vegeta seasoning. My wife hates it when I pronounce it that way, especially in public. Passion fruit, heavy whipping cream. We're making something totally wild up in here. Lysol. Street taco corn tortillas, lemon juice, arrabbiata marinara sauce. I gotta get us 2 more shopping list items. Come on, guys, we are only at 8. We need 2 more here. But I'm gonna keep practicing. 1 is fun, 2 is you, 3 is free, 4 is more, 5 is thrive, 6 is mix, 7 is heaven, 8 is date, 9 is fine, 10 is hen. I think we are there, right, with our list. I think we're about ready on our shopping list. I'm going to go ahead and just drop a couple more items down in here. I'm going to say, applesauce pouches, and I'm going to go with Kathy's recommendation of toothpaste. Okay, so let me just see. Quick recommendation. Just like, what do you guys think? What is the percentage chance that you think that you could remember this shopping list in order perfectly while you are there at the store? Tabasco sauce, fajita seasoning, passion fruit. See, I can say it correctly. Passion fruit, heavy whipping cream, Lysol, street taco, corn tortillas, lemon juice, arrabbiata, marinara sauce, applesauce pouches, and toothpaste. There is about a 0% chance that I could remember even half of this if I tried to memorize it that way. But I can fake like I've got a good memory if I use the peg list. 1 is fun, 2 is you, 3 is free, 4 is more, 5 is thrive, 6 is mix, 7 is heaven, 8 is date, 9 is fine, 10 is hen. Because what we do is we take these two lists, the peg list, which is easy to remember that you will remember forever the rest of your life, and you connect it with your shopping list. So imagine we say like 1 is fun. What is something that is fun, especially at the end of May in the summer like this? A slip and slide. That is right. You're going to a party and you see a slip and slide and you are so excited to get on there. You get on your bathing suit, you get run, and you dive into those fountains that are shooting Tabasco sauce all over you. It is so great. It's so cool because as you're sliding down that slip and slide, you are getting that Tabasco sauce up in your mouth, up in your face, up in your eyes. I want you to imagine what it smells like, it tastes like, it feels like. The more we connect with this image, the better it's going to be. So that slip and slide full of Tabasco sauce. 2 is you, fajita seasoning. You wake up in the morning, you stretch, you get out of bed, you swing your legs over, you blearily walk to the bathroom, you rub your face, you look in the mirror, and not surprised at all because it's the way you always look in the mirror. You look and you are made entirely out of fajita seasoning. You're like all this spicy red powder all over your face. That is your whole face. I got you. Imagine it. Perfect detail. The more detail you get, it's going to be, if you can smell that fajita seasoning as you're looking in the mirror, it's going to be even better. 3, free passion fruit. One of the things I love is giving things out for free. On the way home today, I think I saw probably 4 or 5 people in need standing on street corners asking for stuff. And something I do that they absolutely love is just like toss some free passion fruit. I want you to imagine for a second that you're like driving down the street, not even people asking for stuff. You're just giving it for free to anybody walking down the street, sitting at a bus stop. You got a big old bag of passion fruit. You're just throwing those passion fruit out the window, hitting people in the face, hitting them in the shoulders, hitting them in the backpacks. I want you to imagine the passion fruit exploding as you're hitting the people with them. 4 more, heavy whipping cream. How much heavy whipping cream do you need? All of it. Even more. You're supposed to measure out a little bit. No, you need more. I want you to imagine a bowl of whipping cream, a mixing bowl of whipping cream. As you're mixing up that whipping cream, trying to make the whipping cream, more cream is coming out, more and more. It is like that scene from Fantasia with Mickey. I want you to imagine your mixing bowl is just like shooting whipping cream straight up in the air. 5, thrive Lysol. This one is actually pretty easy because if you have thrived at all, it is because you've got Lysol in your life. I want you to imagine yourself like not just living, but thriving. You are at Trader Joe's where you're going to like buy all this good stuff that I'm thinking about a lot because I'm very hungry, and you're spinning in circles and you're like smiling and beautiful music is playing and you are like shooting Lysol out in both directions. 6, mix street taco corn tortillas. Man, you guys are making it tough. We're going to mix up some street taco corn tortillas. You're mixing up that whipping cream before. You put that whipping cream in, you're mixing it up. The thing that makes whipped cream as wonderful as it is, if you're a baker, you know this secret, it is the street taco corn tortillas. So you got to imagine you're like making that whipped cream, you're getting those soft peaks coming up, starting to turn firm. You got to start like putting in those corn tortillas. You put them in and you get those peaks coming up and they're just like shooting tortillas straight out of there. 7, heaven, lemon juice. I'm sorry, you're dead. Bad news. I know, it's horrible. You've died. You've gone up to heaven. You see St. Peter at the pearly gates, reads your name, time to go in. Those gates open up and you walk into this beautiful land, clouds everywhere, angels, the whole deal, and streets paved with, that's right, lemon juice. I want you to imagine that you're like wading through that stuff, ankle deep, getting all over the place. Your feet are nice and lemony. 8, date, arrabbiata marinara sauce. You're going out on a date. It's beautiful. You are so excited that you went to the fanciest restaurant you could find and you ordered for the other person. You were really excited that you like locked this down in the first place. Oh, I guess also it's like way post-COVID because you're like in a restaurant eating stuff. You ordered the special, a big old bowl of arrabbiata marinara sauce. I hope you love tomatoes and spiciness because that's what you're sitting down to. You both like, it's like having a bowl of gazpacho. It's just like a big old bowl of marinara sauce. Let me see what's going on here. Is this music still playing? Yep, it is. Cool. 9, fine applesauce pouches. And then you're sitting there at your date, and guess what? Super excited your date finally shows up, and it's wild. Just as fine as they were on that unnamed dating app, right? You went ahead and swiped on them because they were so dang fine. They are absolutely 100% made out of applesauce pouches. It is just like one big applesauce pouch sitting down with you. 10 hen toothpaste. This one's super easy. You guys know why people keep chickens. It's not just that they're cute. It's not just that you want to roast them up. It's what you get from chickens. Toothpaste. And a lot of people, what they do, they go out there to the hen house, pick up the hen, and there's like a big old pile of wet toothpaste in there. No, that's not how you do it. I want you to imagine squeezing that chicken to get the toothpaste. You just like take the chicken, you squeeze it, and out of that cloaca comes some nice piping hot toothpaste right on your toothbrush to brush them. So now what you can do is go back and quiz yourself. I imagine 1, fun, slip and slide, Tabasco sauce. 2, you looking in the mirror, the fajita seasoning. 3, free, throwing passion fruit out your window at people. Passion fruit. 4, more, heavy whipping cream. 5, Thrive Lysol. 6, mix the street taco corn tortillas. 7, Heaven lemon juice. 8, date arrabbiata marinara sauce. 9, fine applesauce pouches. 10, hen toothpaste. There you go. Now here's the thing. That could just be the recency effect that I remember it well. But here's a cool thing. If you're in the stream right now, I can give you one additional bonus point. There's absolutely going to be a question on the test asking you about one of these shopping list items. So go ahead and just like practice it a little bit. See what it is that's on the shopping list and see how well you can remember it after the fact. Cool. So with that, I want to jump back into talking about how to use our memories specifically to study for the test. Let me get back up to our original view here. And we'll talk about studying for the test. I got a lot of questions about getting ready for the test. Essentially, what is the best way to study and how much time should I study? The big thing to remember is that I expect you to spend about 12 hours a week overall on this class. And that's for everything, right? That's for reading, watching, listening, doing, studying, all of it. This number, 12 hours a week, is not my number, it's the college's number. This is what we expect from like a 3 credit hour class, is about 12 hours of involvement every single week. So what I'm asking you guys to do here is to not plan to study 2 hours, 6 hours, 10 hours for the test, but instead spend 12 hours a week doing class stuff, learning class material, so that you're really just prepared when you get there. A lot of people shared their, let me go ahead and I will scroll up now, talk about like ways to learn the material well. And these recommendations are really solid. Chelsea makes the recommendation of writing and note-taking. If you're not already writing and note-taking, you absolutely should be. Because like Chelsea, like Kathy, like Kylie here, taking notes is the number one thing you can do to boost your ability to remember the information. And this is because there are a lot of techniques we may use that people taught us, but that weren't really well supported by evidence. Rereading is an example. If you're reading a chapter more than once, it means that you didn't really learn it well the first time. The same goes for highlighting. A lot of us, me included, were taught to highlight things in a textbook in order to learn it well. It turns out that highlighting doesn't hurt you. It just doesn't help. In lots of studies, we see that if you ask people to read a chapter of a textbook and take a test, and you ask another group of people to read a chapter of a textbook, highlight the things they think is important, and then take the test, they do the same. The difference here is that even though it doesn't hurt you, you do pay an opportunity cost, meaning that you have the opportunity to do something better, and you're not. So in order to really maximize your learning ability, I'm going to make a few recommendations. The first recommendation I'm going to make is that you make use of a thing called the study cycle. The study cycle is kind of like a global, week-long or 2-week-long framework for thinking about how to study, how to spend your time. You don't need to, screenshot this or take a bunch of notes on this right now, but just write down the study cycle. That's what it's called. The basic principle here is to distribute your studying over the course of an entire week, studying every single day. If you were learning guitar or learning to paint or learning to do Krav Maga, you wouldn't just do it for 8 hours once every month, right? You would do it every single day for at least 20 minutes. And learning this material is the same way. you'll find that you spend a lot less time reviewing, getting caught up, being stressed out, and you'll find that the time that you spend studying is really well invested in just studying rather than feeling really stressed and getting chilled out and learning to focus. You'll just be like picking up the same stuff you looked at before. So that kind of distributive studying is a really core part of this. Repetition, looking over a lot of the same stuff, usually your notes, not the chapter itself or the video itself. Trying to rewatch videos kind of sucks. But also actively engaging in your studying is a big part of this. So like the recommendations before, taking notes from a chapter, from a video, from a podcast, it's really hard to fall asleep while doing that stuff. It's hard to think about what you're going to do this weekend while you're writing something down. And so taking those notes is a really great way to focus, and taking any notes at all are really helpful. But that kind of effective focus, how do you use that focus? This is where we can connect the study cycle with a couple of other techniques that I really like to recommend. Again, the study cycle mostly involves like previewing your material, engaging with the material itself, reviewing after the fact, studying on your own, and then, assessing kind of like, what am I learning well? What am I not learning as well? The next thing I would like to recommend is the use of a textbooking, note-taking, studying technique called the PQ3R technique. It's a horrible name for a really great tool. I love to use this tool for textbook chapters for people who hate using textbooks. One of my biggest problems with textbooks is that we're often told that we need to read the textbook when that's not what you need to do with it at all. Reading it is a really bad way to learn the material. I love to read young adult fantasy and science fiction books. I love to read them because they're not challenging, because they're fun, they're engaging. But if you stop me at any point and ask me what was in the last paragraph I read, I couldn't tell you, because it was like watching a movie. And if you engage with the textbook on that level, like that's actually not great, because it's easy to forget that stuff. So instead of thinking about reading the textbook, where you're just going to put eyes on your page and then forget about it, think about mining that chapter for information, because again, your goal isn't to read it and get it over with. It's to pull information out of it. A lot of times we end up saying we're going to study, we're going to read the textbook, but it's like, I've only got 20 minutes. I need to read this chapter. And that pressure forces us, it motivates us to complete the task in a certain amount of time, even if that's not effective. So the PQ3R technique breaks down the stressful task of something like reading a textbook chapter into something that's much more manageable. In fact, you could think about these 5 stages: preview, question, read, write, review, or read, recite, review, as being like 5 steps that you could take over the course of 5 different days. The first day, all you're going to do is spend 15 minutes previewing the chapter. Look at it, write down the headers, get an idea of what it covers, see what some of the big ideas are so that you know what you're going into and you move into the future. A lot of times you'll find that kind of like wets your whistle, you're primed, your appetite, now that it's whetted, you need to like read in a little bit more depth so you can get started, like putting together some questions. Questions like, why am I reading this? Why does it matter? How does it connect with my life? If you want some guiding questions, look at the review questions at the end of the chapter or the learning objectives at the beginning of the chapter. So you can create those questions and use those to frame your studying as you move forward. The next step is reading, which again, we don't want to think about it as reading. We want to think about it more as mining for information. As you go through the chapter, there are a couple of things that I find really helpful. Writing things down in your own words, because again, you can copy stuff like rote memorization without understanding it, but putting in your own words makes it really understandable. Make sure you know what it means, because if you can't put it in your own words, you probably don't understand it. This leads me to another thing that's really helpful when it comes to writing your essays. If you find yourself using quotes, it means we probably need to understand the material better. If you're quoting an academic source like our textbook, it means that we can't think of a better way to phrase it, which means that you probably don't understand it as well as you could. So finding a way to put it in your own words will not only impress me, but it'll help you learn the information even better. This is where this like reciting comes about at the end, that if you not only write your notes in your own words, but you say it out loud. You may have heard before about whether somebody is a visual learner, an auditory learner, or a kinesthetic learner. It turns out that these things, learning modalities as a like programmed way to learn, there isn't a whole lot of evidence for that, but we definitely have learning preferences. And we know that the more we learn in these modalities, the better we're going to do. So if you can make yourself not just a visual learner reading a textbook, but also use your hands, use your mouth, use your ears, you're going to be encoding in all of your senses, well, everything except smell and taste, and really teaching yourself the information far more effectively. So if you start early in the process, using the study cycle, using the PQ3R technique, and then if you're like, okay, I'm going to take notes, but I don't like, what do I put on the paper? Make use of the Cornell note-taking method. I link to that in the syllabus, but you can also just Google the Cornell method. It's not necessarily the best method for everybody, but it is a method. And if you don't have one yet, it's a method that I would recommend using as a starting point. Start there and see what works well for you. This is a really great way to frame out your studying time and make sure that you use that study time effectively, because you don't just want to study hard. Studying hard doesn't necessarily help you. I talk to students a lot and ask them like, well, what are you going to do differently in the future to make sure that you do better? And they say, study harder, as if that means anything. Like, you're going to scrunch up your face more. I'm going to study hard, right? I'm going to sweat more while I do it. I'm going to, I don't know what, right? So if we can think of practical steps that we can take while studying, like to break it up into smaller pieces, to give ourselves breaks, to start earlier, to not just read the textbook, but treat reading the textbook as studying, not only will you find that you learn the material better, but you're going to spend less time overall, since you won't have to like learn and then study and then review. You'll just do it all at once, but you're going to feel way better while you do it. You won't spend the whole summer stressed out about how you're going to do on this test. Let me see here. There were a couple of other points I was going to make here in terms of studying. There are a couple of questions here about like, well, what should you study? Like, I often find myself studying on, like memorizing vocabulary words, rarely studying other material. Like, how do I figure out what's effective? What I really like to do is to make use of a tool. I think Kathy recommended using Quizlet. I really like to use Quizlet, but use it as I make use of elaborative rehearsal. Flashcards are not really great in that they just teach us a single definition for a term. And if that's not the definition we run into, we can end up like suffering in a big way in the long run. So instead, what can be helpful is to make use of flashcards where you have the term on one side and then on the other side don't have anything. So that when you come up against the term, if you don't know the definition, not only do you have to come up with it on the spot, but it's also a sign that it's something you need to study more. And then if you go back into the text to review it, to find that definition, you have to go back to the video. That's not wasted time. That's invested time. Because the more effort you put into finding that information, the better you'll remember it. And if it feels like wasted time, if it feels like I don't have time for this shit, that's a sign that we need to break out more time for studying in the future, right? So this kind of studying where we go back, find the term, and then put it in our own words, that's going to be the key part here. You're going to make sure you really learn that information well. Now, once you know all the terms from the textbook, all the terms that show up in the videos and the podcasts, you're going to be really solid on your foundation. But then figuring out how to apply those terms to yourself, continuing to go through that deck of cards, whether it's physical or virtual, something like Quizlet, continuing to go through it and come up with something new every time, a new way to apply it to your own life, a new way to apply it to someone else's situation, finding a way to connect these terms together. Randomize your deck. You can shuffle them up or randomize them in Quizlet, pull out 2 terms at a time and find a way to connect them together. Even if they seem unrelated, if you can connect them, then you know that you're going to know that really, really well. Brooke asked a really good question here. Are there topics that are covered more than others? I try to find a pretty good balance, but one of the things that might be worth paying attention to is what it is I talk about like in videos and stuff. I don't just like copy and paste stuff from videos and then like put it into the test. But since I'm the person who writes the test, if I thought something was important enough to like record a podcast or a video or find something on that, it means it's probably going to be pretty important. This one, for example, stuff on mindset is critical, but so are theories of like self and self-identity, how you become the person that you are. Stuff like that is really important. I see Chelsea asked a question. What's the difference between reading something to learn and reading something to learn and study simultaneously? I don't think there should be a difference at all. Like studying, I mean, what is studying if not trying to intensely learn to remember better? Ideally, I want you to learn this stuff to never forget it, right? And this is why I love podcasts like Cautionary Tales or articles written by people like Malcolm Gladwell, because they're not just the material, they're the material presented in an interesting way that you're interested in learning, and hopefully you'll remember in the future because of a cool example or a way that it applied to your own life. I love Kathy's example of making PowerPoints as if you have to teach the class. That's how I've learned this stuff. Learning material to teach someone else is one of the best ways to learn material. Another thing you guys can do is to find other people to study with, even not necessarily in the class, but even in like your roommates if you're studying together, because not only do you create a culture of learning, but you also get an opportunity to share with each other. One other point I wanted to make before we wrap up here. If you guys are not yet making use of the Learning Commons resources, you can get there in Canvas by clicking on the pencil over here, SF Learning Commons. The Learning Commons is a fantastic team of people and collection of resources meant to help you boost your learning. And in particular, geez, I'm having a hard time. I need to recommend academic success coaching. I am, among other things, an academic success coach at Santa Fe. Success coaches work with students on all sorts of stuff. Our goal really is to help students establish goals and then put together plans to reach those goals. Working on time management, studying, test taking techniques, stress management techniques, even money management techniques. These are the things we work with students on. And having a coach is like having a partner who is there invested in your success, which is awesome. It may be tough news, but if the tips that I have shared today feel like they're not helpful because you don't have time to implement them right now, it means that we probably need to make a change in the future. Because if we always do what we've always done, we're always going to get what we always got, right? And there isn't a tip or a trick. There isn't a strange hidden technique that's going to let you easily memorize 2 weeks worth of material in the space of an afternoon. The absolute best thing you can do is really spread it out and make your job easier and learn it way better in the long run. If this is something that you've tried before and it hasn't been successful, the number one thing I can recommend, apart from talking to a coach, is to let me know. Don't wait until the future. Don't wait to see how the first test turns out to let me know. Just like dip out of the stream now or hit pause on the video if you're watching it after the fact, send me a message and let me know that you want to talk. Because whether it's before this test or not, I want to sit down with you, I want to come up with a plan, and I want to work together to get you the A that you want in this class. Every single person in this class can get an A if you want it. We just come up with a plan together and knock it out. And that's because it's not about studying harder. It's about studying, using techniques and tools that maybe you didn't even know were there. So yeah, I think that's about it in terms of what I was hoping to talk about in the live stream today. I think I just want to remind you guys of a couple of things. First of all, it takes me a little while to grade essays, so you won't have that feedback right away. Try to be a little patient on those, but I hope to have them done in the space of about a week. Though this weekend, I'll share with you guys some pictures, but we're going to be traveling and camping in our tiny camper to go visit a family member. We have a tiny camper that's inside 6 feet wide by 8 feet long, and it's us and our kiddo and our dogs with us, which is just wild. The tests, I'll have a video for you guys on the tests later on how I regrade the tests, throwing out old bad questions. But remember, I regrade tests, and oftentimes your grade goes up. But also remember that your 2 lowest test grades drop. So these really are meant to be learning opportunities. Learn social psychology, learn how my tests work, learn how to study better so that you can really knock this stuff out and finish up the semester with the grade you want. The biggest thing I can really recommend right now is that if you have questions, if you need anything, if you want to talk about psychology, or if you're just like stressed in general, hit me up, talk to me. I want to hear what's going on, and I may not have the answer to everything, but I'm always happy to talk. I want to know what's going on, and I'm happy to help you find the resources to really boost you here. So it has been a real pleasure time with you guys about social psychology, sharing our memory tools, tips, and techniques. If you have questions about anything, including the stream, hit me up and let me know. And give 07 a listen. I think you guys will absolutely love them. Also, don't forget Grady's recommendations of Our Planet and Hilda. You'll love those guys too. Good luck on the test. Good luck on the essay. If you need anything, let me know. But until then, I'm your professor, Ryan Keith, and this is Social